Hello everyone and welcome back to Nordvik. This is episode 9 and we're gonna start off with taking a look at what we built in the last episode, the huge shopping mall episode, if you might call it that. It is the Wilhelmshaven Center, which is still not difficult to pronounce, but it's just sounds a bit weird, but that's the name of the shopping mall. It's on the workshop, and if you're wondering exactly where it is, you can always go to my description and find my collection. There I have all the mods and assets that I used. I'm really happy with the last episode, how it turned out, and also I'm happy with the views that I got, because I have been seeing quite a drop in viewership of on the last few episodes, and that is to be expected. You always get quite a bump in views on like the first few episodes of a new series. I think it's, if you just type in episode 1 in the title of a video, it automatically just gets pushed out a lot more to a lot more people. So once you're up to episode 8, episode 9, it's not been pushed out by YouTube so much. The algorithm doesn't favor it as much as if it was episode 1, but it's good seeing that it's up there with some of my more viewed ones, but it's still far away from episode 1. I think it's half of the views of episode 1, but you can't really think about the views when you're making YouTube content. If you just start looking at the views and that's the only thing that matters, you're not gonna keep going for a while. So that is definitely not the correct mindset. Don't look at the views, don't look at the number of likes, don't look at the subscriber amounts. Just create something that you're happy with, post it, and then just go on with your life. That's what I've been doing. That's the trick, to keep going for as long as possible. We didn't just build a shopping mall in the last episode, we also built these newer, more modern neighborhoods with some very nice condos, probably built in the last 10, maybe even 5 years. So it's an area that's been on a lot of changes recently. And I did discuss it more in detail in the last episode, so yeah, you should probably go ahead and watch it if you haven't. But if you have, then stick around, because the next episode, which is this one, is just about to start. And I also made a procedural object sign, as you can see here, that further tells you that we are in fact in Nordvik, and you're watching the Nordvik series. This is episode 9, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy yourself. Like in any other episode, we are starting off with a before and after. I usually build a lot of houses, a lot of residential areas between episodes, just to keep the series going and building out the city. And as you can see here, we filled out quite a large spot, and in the top corner you actually see some spoilers. That's actually what we're gonna build in this episode. But and yeah, filled in a huge area and got a lot of people moving in, and we basically almost finished with the city of Nordvik here. What we are gonna be building in this episode is a huge museum, and actually it's just this huge park that we're gonna fill out. And before I started, I thought about what we could build in this area, because I knew I wanted this area to be quite empty, really. I wanted to have a huge park, because that is quite common, not just in Scandinavia, but I feel in most reasonably sized cities in not just the not just Europe, but I feel like almost everywhere in the world really, you gotta have a decently sized park just to make sure that there's some green space and you can have some paths going and get people out of their houses and into the open area. And it's also very good in City Skylines, considering your FPS, for example, to leave some areas a little bit more open, just call it a park, and don't fill it with that much, don't fill it with trees and buildings and anything. Just keep it open, and that will drastically help out your FPS if you're struggling with that, because most people do struggle with FPS, because you want to fill in your city with a lot of detail, a lot of buildings, a lot of trees, a lot of props, and before you know it, you can't really do anything in the game. You're running at 5 frames per second and you're not really enjoying yourself anymore, and you just have to start a new city. So to increase the longevity of your series or of your builds, then consider adding some quite empty parks. Now, I'm saying that you should add a park and keep it empty, but I'm not doing it in this one. I'm actually filling this park up with quite a lot of detail, quite a lot of trees, but it could have been a lot worse. But what I decided to do with this area is build this museum instead. There's going to be a park surrounding the museum, but the main aspect is this museum. Now, this museum is inspired by a outdoor museum in Oslo called the Norwegian Folkemuseum. Now, Folkemuseum basically means people's museum if you translate it directly. It doesn't really make sense, but what it really is that it's trying to show you how people lived for 100 years ago, 200 years ago, even 1,000 years ago, for example. And everything is outdoors. You're walking through streets as they were 200 years ago. You are looking at architecture from like church architecture and farmhouses as they were 300, 400, 500 years ago. And the people that worked there are also dressed as if they were living in those ages, which is quite cool, and they're often in character as well. So I remember it's a few years since I've been there, but those who worked there, they just basically just went on with their lives. They didn't really acknowledge us. They just, yeah, for example, they were like one woman, she was just washing her clothes in this tub just outside of her house, and there was just plenty of people there taking pictures, everything. She didn't flinch either. She just pretended we weren't even there, and she stayed in character, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I wanted to build that as well here in Nordvik, an area that you could visit and really see how people lived in Nordvik for 100 years ago, 200, 300, even up towards 1,000 years ago. What I really like about those kinds of museums is that first of all, they're outdoors, and you can really, instead of just watching artifacts behind a mirror, you can actually just walk through history. You can touch the buildings, you can walk inside the buildings, you can just really, it's like a time machine. You can just go back in time, and I think that's really cool, and it's a lot more interesting than just looking at spearheads that is behind a thick glass wall in a cold, dusty museum somewhere. It is here you truly experience, history and how it was all those years ago. But this museum, it focuses on really life in Nordvik and how they lived in those years. So it's not really just a museum for the country that Nordvik is in, but mostly Nordvik and the region of Nordvik. Now I'm not gonna sit here and talk about what you're seeing on screen because well, you can just see what's happening, but I'm just gonna recap a little bit of what I'm planning to include in this museum. I wanted first to have an area, like an open street area, like a market area, from well, the idea was to have it maybe 100 years ago, or not even that, maybe like 70 years ago. It's a lot of mix, but really in certain areas within those streets here you could think that it is from the 1800s, but then other areas it looks like it could be from the 60s, for example, the 1960s. So there's a lot of different areas and a lot of different looks, but I'm still happy with how it turned out, and it doesn't really matter if it's not 100% correct, as long as it looks good and also functions in the game. That is more than good enough for me, and you can actually see it at the end of this video during the cinematics. The amount of people that come here is quite ridiculous. It's a lot of people. I used a policy to make this park the main park in Nordvik, and I think that also boosts the tourism level that the park has, and we actually are making money. We're profiting of this park, which is something that it's quite rare really to make money of a park that early, probably. But as you can see, I'm actually making money here in game. I don't know why, but I think it's just because of the amount of people I have, or the amount of houses that I have. So a lot of tax income is really the reason why we're making that much money. But yeah, as you can see, not a lot of people that live here, they actually have jobs, because the demand for industrial areas is quite high. So I do have a mod that says that no one can abandon houses. I think it's called the no abandonment mod, probably. So without that one, I don't think I would have made money, because not a lot of people would be living here since they wouldn't get a job. So that number that I'm earning each and every month, it doesn't really add up. It's a little bit yeah, it doesn't tell the full story. But I will be sooner rather than later working on some more industrial areas. But I really want to finish up this city here, the city of Nordvik, so I can just move on to other things, and that's gonna be a lot of industry. It's gonna be a lot of farms, a lot of fishing industry. I'm gonna build a harbor, which will be a lot of industrial building sets. So eventually, I'll work on the demand that we have for industry and offices. I also want to build a functional market in one of the open areas in this museum, with people working there, and you could well, when you're visiting the museum, you could actually buy foods that would be in a market at that time. So you're not gonna see any crazy things like Pepsi or Coke or anything. You're gonna see things that are grown locally, and yeah, and locally produced foods and stuff like that. Just basically stuff that would make sense if this is set 70 years ago, for example. So in order to get a lot of people in this park, I really needed to get some spawners in, and I placed down a lot of these park people generators that basically is a invisible park. And I also downloaded some block services that are just simple square blocks, and these ones, they mimic a I think they mimic a park, or a park like an asset that you place down in a park, and it attracts a certain amount of people, for example. So that is why some areas there's a lot of people gathered in one spot, and that is just because I placed down one of these park entertainers, spawners, or whatever you should call them, in a certain area. And I also have some benches and tables that functions really like a park. So they need road access or path access if it's in a park area. And then you're actually going to see people sitting and visiting these benches. And by doing that, you can actually create what looks like a functional restaurant in, for example, some of these back gardens that I build. So they look like restaurants and or seating areas for restaurants. You actually see people walking through the buildings, through the door, and back, and then coming out in the back and sitting on one of these tables. And yeah, it looks like they're actually enjoying the restaurant or the cafe that is there. It's just another tiny detail, really, that I love to place down in my cities. And some details that you might not realize are there, but yeah, it's more meant for me and my enjoyment by placing down stuff like this. So the other areas that I have is I have an area dedicated to or traditional farmlands in Nordvik, some traditional farmhouses, and actually created a sort of a petting zoo with actual cows and sheep walking around inside a gated area. And I also created a sort of a Viking village with some pretty cool Viking huts, if you can call it a hut, and also had a little pen in that area for pigs. So this would be another petting zoo for these animals. And then the people that do work in this park, they will be dressed as a farmer or as a Viking, depending on where they work. And they actually would one of the tasks that they would have is to take care of these animals and well, basically just act like a farmer back then. I also have placed down a church, a stave church, I don't know what you might call it in English, but it's a special type of church, very special architecture, and you've probably seen something like this before. And so my idea behind why that church would be there is that this is probably a rebuild of a church that was once somewhere in Nordvik, but maybe it was destroyed at one point. Maybe it was caught on fire sometime, like a long time ago, and just the remains left. And then the group that owns this museum, they went ahead and bought up the little that was left of the church, and salvaged the remains, brought it here to the museum, and then rebuilt the church as it would be rebuilt at that time. And now the church is one of the more standout attractions that this museum has. And that's just another tiny detail that shows the continuity of this museum, that they're taking builds and taking history from Nordvik and keeping it alive within this museum. So I think the church would probably be the main attraction in this museum. Another thing that crossed my mind while I was building the farm of this museum was to build a more mansion-like farm, or at least one building to be more sophisticated and more yeah. I wanted to build it like it was like a very rich and influential person that could live there. And in the back I created another seating area, and I think this would be a nice spot for hosting wedding receptions. And I think it would be a very popular spot in Nordvik to hold your wedding receptions over here. So you could rent out just that one building, and then you could hold your wedding reception there. And maybe you can even get married in the church that is also here in the museum, because this is a very nice place to have a wedding reception. It's a old historic building, and the area in the back is basically just it looks like it is built for holding these kinds of receptions. So I kind of went along with the idea as I was building it. Now I don't want to really talk too much about this episode right now. I'll come back to it when we start building on really the next phase or the next area of this park. We're gonna build a fortress further out, so it's not a part of this museum, the fortress, but it is located within the same park that this museum is located at. But I want to talk about this series going forward, and maybe also this channel going forward. I don't really know how many episodes left of Nordvik that we can create. You could possibly go on forever, I feel like, but I don't want to really do that much. Like as I've already stated before, I think the city of Nordvik is almost finished right now. I am gonna build up I'm gonna focus on public transportation in the next episode. That's episode 10. Building some bus lines and stuff like that. So that's gonna be a small episode. I'm gonna do a lot of work. I'm not gonna build that much, I think, right now at least. But after that, you know, what I got left, I still need to build a harbor, like a port, for import and export of goods to this region. I have there's plenty of small towns I want to make, so I might do like a few episodes on that. But like if I were to build 6 small towns, I don't want to do 6 episodes, because these small towns, they will be quite similar. They're not going to be anything special, so they're gonna have just mostly like the same stuff. A few houses, maybe one shop, a church, a primary school, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I don't really know what to do really. I want to work a little bit on sports, so I want to place down some more like I want to build a downhill skiing resort, for example, somewhere. And we also have a huge island out here in the fjord that we need to build up as well. So that's another episode. So we might be looking at, I don't want to say a number, but I think we're looking at like less than 10 episodes till then we can call it an end. It might be a lot less than that, might be 5 episodes, for example. I don't really know, but I also have to sadly look at the views as well, because if I'm working on something, I'm working many hours, and then I post a video, and within a week I have like 200 views, for example, it doesn't really, yeah, doesn't fill me with confidence. And when seeing those low numbers, it doesn't really make me want to produce that much more videos as well, because I don't want to spend that many hours something that not a lot of people see. But then again, I know that a lot of people are really invested in this series, and that makes me really happy. I can just tell how invested people are by, for example, taking a look at my at the Discord channel we have, and how many people are sharing screenshots of their Scandinavian cities, or talking about how their city are, like the ones that they grew up in, for example, in Finland, in Sweden, in Norway. It's a lot of people that seemingly are quite invested in this series, and that makes me just really happy, but also makes me really bummed out when I see quite low numbers. And as I just told you early in the episode, that you shouldn't really look at numbers. You probably need to look at numbers every now and then, especially when you start to have a decent amount of subscribers. I have more than 1,000 right now, and of course, if you have 1,000 subscribers, you want 1,000 views on your episodes. But I know that, you know, some of my subscribers, they subscribed when I was building Boulder Cove, for example, which was more of an American city, or when I was working on maybe even when I was working on a British series that I had many years ago. So I know that you can't really expect like 1,000 views if you have 1,000 subscribers, but that is always the goal when you're working on it. So it's a little bit difficult in times, but I know how long this series can go, and I know how long I want this series to go. But yeah, you just gotta wait and see. You really just gotta wait and see. And you know, I mentioned Boulder Cove, and I think it's probably time to maybe start looking at the season 2 of Boulder Cove. I haven't really opened the save game since last year, so depends if I can make it work again. But if I can, I do want to bring that back at one point and have it running simultaneously as Nordvik, at least for a while. Because also with Boulder Cove, it's not that many episodes till I can actually say that the Boulder Cove series is finished as well. And I do have a lot of ideas on what I want to work on in the future. And you can't really have that many series going on at once, because that basically leaves you to not be able to work on anything, because you just have too much going on at once. But yeah, don't expect Nordvik to going on for 2 years. Don't expect it to go on like Marble Mountain, like seemingly forever. I even knew that before I started working on Nordvik, that I want to build a few things and I want to leave it. So the focus wasn't on building several huge cities. It was, I want one small town, or like a small city, then I want some small towns, villages, and then I want to just keep nature in charge with. I want to have a lot of forest. I always knew that this wouldn't be 60 episodes. I knew that it would be maybe 20 as well. But that is really what I had to say about this series going forward and my channel. I might actually start looking into Boulder Cove right now to see if it actually is functional, and hopefully it is. But the last part of this video is all about building the fortress. I didn't really do too much building around the fortress because it came as a single building. I think it's based off a Finnish castle. I don't really know exactly which one. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's definitely the right style that I wanted. And this would be a very, very old one. This wouldn't be a part of the museum at all. This would be a real fortress that is probably one of the oldest buildings in Nordvik. And it's also placed on top of the tallest area, or the highest area in this park. So it's actually visible from almost everywhere in the city. Even down in downtown Nordvik, you can spot the top of one of the towers, which is actually something I tested out because I really wanted this fortress to be a focal point in this city, and probably one of the main tourist attractions alongside this museum. And then I just added some paths around the entire park, and that was really it. I have not named the park, so maybe that is a task that you can do for me, so I can focus on some other stuff. So let me know in the comments down below what kind of name you would like to give this park. I will also pin a comment asking you again, because, well, we are over half an hour, I think, in this video, and not a lot of people would be listening to what I'm saying right now, so I'm just gonna remind them with that comment. Also, while you're down there, tell me what you think about this museum. Have you been to anything like this before? Is there a museum like this in your hometown, for example? Do let me know, and leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. And if you want to see more of Nordvik, you want to see how it's all gonna turn out in the end, then do consider subscribing. But that is pretty much it. Follow me on Twitter, follow me, you can't follow me on Discord, but join the Discord, and don't follow me in real life. I don't like that. But then again, you can't really follow me in real life. I mostly stay indoors. Unless you come inside my house. Don't come inside my house. Anyways, that is it for this episode. I would like to thank you all for watching. Hope to see you soon. Bye for now.